I skip the role of capital because it would take a little discussion and I'm running out of time. There's a globalization backlash, which begins because of the income distribution effects of globalization before World War I. There are barriers to migration. In America, there are barriers to trade setting in Europe. Then the Europeans get crazy and they have this huge European civil war, as Keynes called it, which actually put globalization on reverse worldwide. Plus the Great Depression, plus the reaction, we call it autarky, we call it big. During the 1930s, all the institutional setting in the world was putting globalization on reverse. So globalization can reverse. Globalization is not necessarily here to stay. Globalization is an artificial affair which stands on a mix of technology and institutions that is very delicate and needs to be continuously reconstructed. Technology change continued, of course, in the 1930s, but it was the social and political reaction. And the question, of course, is about today. About today, and I'll come to today in a second. I'm really coming to a close. Globalization today is a long story. Begins in 1945, if you want, in 1950, but it's very slow in the first part of the post-war. It's only in the 1980s that I see current globalization really beginning to gain force. Institutions. Well, this is Africa, but all the other countries, you see, that's when all the tariffs begin to go down. You see, this is the average, the mean tariff, which is not so meaningful, but you know, gives you an idea. Tariffs go down actually very, very, very late. It's only in the 90s that you have institutions pushing strongly for a globalization result. The Big Bang, in my opinion, as I teach my students, is, if you want, collapsed into a fairly short period of time. In these 3-4 years, you have the end of socialist economies. Mind you, there's a very interesting hypothesis. The end of the Cold War as one of the sparkling forces for technological change. Technology was confined to, most of the technology we use now was confined to the military. Was already there. The microchip, Intel, microchip patented the microchip, I don't remember, it was 1965 or 66. By the 1990s, a lot of technology was there. Embargo, famous black box. A military technology sold to the Allies within this black box that they was not supposed to open. They will put this black box on the missiles and leave it there without trying to figure out what's in there. The civilian use of this technology begins with then Tiananmen. China's long march towards the market began in the late 70s. But it's only when Tiananmen, apparently contradiction, but a very clever move, if you want to be cynical a bit, by the then ruling class, showing a strong fit inside and then to keep quiet the conservative part of it, and then opening up the economy. And that's when you really have an acceleration again in China's growth. Then you have at the same time the big change in India. Singh becomes prime minister in 1992, and all his reforms. It's an old democracy, very socialist, very anti-market, and then it's a big bang in India. He is finance minister, I think, from 92 to 96, and really he begins, and now he's prime minister again. And then, of course, the Treaty of European Union, which is goes under the name of Maastricht Treaty. Okay. Just give you an example, and then I come to a close. China, 10 years, grows as fast as Britain at the high moment of its economic power of the Industrial Revolution, moved in 40 years. So the progress that England made in 40 years at the peak of its economic success was matched by India 150 years later, in only in 10 years. But this is not the most important. It's that Britain was about, in those days, less than 30 million people. Here we're talking, on average, about almost 1.5 billion. So we're talking various order of magnitude. So you can imagine how this changes the whole world. Likewise, China. China, same period of time, makes the same progress that Germany. Germany was the big success of the second wave of industrialization in the 19th century. Second half of the 19th century. So you took Germany 1840, 1870, same development as India in 10 years. And again, Germany was larger in population than Britain, but still orders of magnitude we're talking about. So this is, in my opinion, my generation has lived through a revolution that is unmatched in any possible previous economic revolutions. Much more important, if you want, for the effects on the world than the British Industrial Revolution.